Okay, here we are for another one of our DEVC Zoom meetings. And we have Jim Burness with us today, who's going to be talking to us about national car charging, which he's had for a number of years. And Jim, we'll just turn it over to you.
All right, terrific. And I want to acknowledge that one of our other team members, one of our newest team members is also on the line, Kamala Vanderkolk, who you may all remember from the bill that went through a couple of years ago that allowed signage and the ability to ticket and tow cars that are icing charging stations. So she joined us in January and is doing a lot of the work here in the state of Colorado. So very glad to have her as part of the team. And so I see her, she's online there somewhere.
Yeah.
There she is.
Okay, Kamala. So yeah, as we were discussing in the intro there, I started national car charging way back in 2011, and I'd gone to a conference in Washington, D.C., and got to drive the very early Nissan Leaf and the very early Chevy Volt and a conversion Ford Transit Connect van. And having spent 20 years in the car business, I walked away from that conference thinking, I've seen the future. And I was already doing solar at the time and decided that it was important to add electric vehicle charging. So was one of the very first people to get into the industry and became ChargePoint's 7th distributor in history. They now have 200 or so. And today we actually are their largest value-added reseller and happen to be based right here in Colorado. We've done probably half the charging ports in the state of Colorado, but we've done 8,000 nationwide. And we have a port in every state except for North Dakota and West Virginia. So if you have any friends in North Dakota or West Virginia, please let us know, because I'd really like to check those states off before the end of the year. But we carry multiple brands. There's often the misperception that we are ChargePoint and ChargePoint is us. That's not correct. We are a representative of theirs, but we also carry brands like NLX and Tritium and Webasto, Juice Bar, EV Passport, which is a relatively new manufacturer on the scene. We have Alpha Charge, which is a white label product. And so we really want to make sure we have a portfolio that stretches the entire gamut. So we have everything from the $700 home unit to the $250,000 NEVI project, or even more than that actually, for the new highway fast charging plazas that the president is wanting to put every 50 miles on every interstate. And we've done projects up and down that line. We do a lot of work with governments around the country. We are on the Colorado state contract. We're the only local firm that's not a petroleum supplier, services supplier. The only ChargePoint partner that's actually local. And the good news is that we're also the cheapest. So it means we're saving taxpayers dollars. And then if you tuned in early, you probably caught a little bit of the conversation I was having with Jim Smith. We do have a dedicated service director so that if there is some sort of service need, we have the ability to respond to it. And that's something that we usually do just to make sure that our clients get the best service possible. The industry has had part shortages horrendously for the last year or so. And I know ChargePoint has taken a big hit on that. But I'll tell you, they're not the only ones. We have one customer that waited 16 months for a charging station and finally got it last week. So it's something that the entire industry seems to be suffering from right now. But we're really still loving what we're doing and putting ports in everywhere we can. Every time I see an empty parking space, I think it's an opportunity to electrify it. And we do a lot of advocacy. In fact, there's a bill that's coming up later this month, and that would put some of the codes that are similar to what Denver has in new building and make them statewide. So we'll be down at the legislature asking for some support from our legislators on that. Because we started the whole company on the basis that we wanted to make this transition as easy as possible for our clients. And so if that means getting involved in events like what used to be Plug-in Day, now Drive Electric Week, or if it means getting down to the state capitol and pushing for bills that's going to move the electric vehicle industry further, then we're going to be there, because it's important to really look at this holistically. So that is kind of the short version of what we do. And I should say we have a team of 15. About 6 of us are based right here in Denver. So we have a little office south of downtown and a warehouse a little bit further south of that. And this is home for us. Kamala, what did I forget?
I think you covered, I mean, the big stuff for sure. We're hitting every type of electrification situation you can think of for vehicles, right? Fleet, personal, buses now, like school buses. So yeah.
We don't do a lot of residential. We've done some here and there, but we've done a lot of multifamily, apartment buildings, condos, retail centers, a lot of government offices, parks, as Kamala said, buses, you name it, with hospitals. I think I can't think of any vertical markets that we haven't hit out there. And everybody wants to get involved in electrifying the world right now. I should say that one thing that we take very seriously is we're very careful about the brands that we represent. We don't often we don't like to take on brands that we don't have complete confidence in. We won't do it. So there's a number of brands out there that you may see that are not on our portfolio. And if that's the case, it's probably a pretty good reason. Either they don't have the reliability record that we feel they should. They don't have the financial stability that we feel they ought to. They aren't offering any particular value that nobody else is offering. This is one of the things we see every single day. And I get my mailbox filled with people asking us to take on their products. There is a new entrant into this market literally every day. And so we take our role as vetting the market very seriously. And so you're not going to see us take on everybody, but if you do see us bring on a new brand or a new manufacturer, you know that there was a pretty extensive process behind it. And even some of the big boys are suffering right now, but I think we're going to see some relief from that in 2023 as we continue the year. With that, I'd love to take some questions and see what people are wondering about. Jim,
do you is ChargePoint your favorite networked charging vendor?
Favorite is a loaded word. Yeah, we know them well. We talk to them multiple times a day. They are the biggest. They still have about 60% market share. They make a great piece of software. The hardware is as good as almost anybody in the industry, but it's not flawless. And so they're about 50% of what we do. But the other 50% are the other brands out there. For instance, we are about to announce doing an entire state NEVI program. And that's not going to be a ChargePoint product. It's going to be something else because it was a better fit for what the customer wanted and for what the use case was going to be. And so that's where we really start everything is we sit down with a client and we ask, how do you want to use it? What do you want to achieve? What features are important to you? And sometimes that ends up being ChargePoint, and sometimes it ends up being Tritium, and sometimes it ends up being Juice Bar. Sometimes it ends up being EV Passport. It really is all driven by their priorities. And so I think frequent would probably be a fair term, but favorite, it all depends on what the customer wants. And I'll tell my customers all the time, I don't care what you pick, as long as it's something that's going to work for you and you're happy with it.
I've been very annoyed at how much they charge to be on their network to renew. It's like $600 a year, I think, something like that I pay for my 2 charging stations at the Net Zero store to be on their network. And unless they're on the network, I can't get any revenue. So I've switched to a revenue situation, and I love the programmability of ChargePoint. For instance, you can charge for up to 2 hours for free at our location, but then it's $2 an hour afterwards. And enough people say after the 2 hours that it does cover my $600 a year to be on the network, but it just seems an excessive fee to me to be on the network.
Yeah, it's kind of where they all are, and with a few exceptions. I mentioned EV Passport earlier. For those of you that don't know, ChargePoint does not own and operate any of their stations, with very, very few exceptions. Their business model is to sell to site hosts and let the site hosts operate them. And they do have an annual software cost, and then on top of that, they have a 10% processing fee. EV Passport is a relatively new player in the market. But we know some of the executives there very well, and so we decided to jump in with them fairly early. And they have a very low annual networking fee, but they keep 15% of the revenue as opposed to 10%. So, Bob, I hope you're doing all right there. It looks like you had a little coughing issue. So hopefully you can wave and let us know you're okay. Yeah, it's all over the map. We actually created a chart that will show what the different networking options are. And I think most people are surprised at how different it can be depending on what you want to do.
I love the programming capability of ChargePoint. For example, and it makes it ideal, and I don't know if there's anyone who competes with them in terms of, for instance, servicing an apartment house, where you could have a group where only residents are in the group and they pay one rate, but if you're not a resident and you plug in, you get charged a whole lot more, and therefore it keeps the charging stations available to the residents. In our case, I have all my agents are free for as long as they want to park at those charging stations, but people who aren't members of that group pay after 2 hours. So that's the kind of flexibility that ChargePoint offers, and I don't know if anyone else offers it, but it is a nice thing. And what makes it possible for people who don't have garages but are in a HOA or in an apartment house to have a favorable opportunity to charge their vehicles. And the other thing, of course, is that you can set it up so that after say 8 hours, somebody would start paying a lot of money, even if they're a resident, so that nobody can just like park overnight and leave their car after it's fully charged.
Yeah, all the networks out there have some degree of pricing flexibility, but I think it's probably fair to say ChargePoint has the most flexibility out there. You can add different groups and treat them different ways. We have some that are programmed so that the vehicles that are owned by the site host are free. Well, a car dealership actually is a good example. We have a client where if it's an in-stock vehicle, one they own, they use a card that makes it free for those. If you bought the car there, you pay one rate, and if you didn't buy the car there, you pay a higher rate. So they can really stagger it. And then on top of that, you can do time of use pricing so that if you pay more in the middle of the day and less at night, you can mimic the utility and set your pricing up that way. So there are lots of different ways to program it. And then Jim, you actually bring up a really important point. The penalty, the overstay penalty, really does work very well in terms of managing driver behavior. In addition to the ability to ticket and tow a car if you use one of Kamala's signs. We had one of our clients that says it's a public parking entity, and they said, when we used to write physical tickets for people overstaying, they'd go across the street and they'd challenge the ticket, and usually they get dismissed. Now that it's part of the charging system, they really can't appeal it. And so, there we go. Yeah. Kamala is holding up one of the signs that is the official approved CDOT sign if you want to ticket and tow a vehicle on your property, or at least threaten to do so. I see a hand raised. You want to go ahead and ask a question?
Yes, my question is from a driver perspective. I have a ChargePoint charger in my garage, but 99% of the time I charge at home. But for traveling cross country, I understand that Kansas is kind of resistant. There's only a few chargers that I know of on I-70 going across Kansas. Do you know if there's a way to get that, help that situation?
Well, I think it will resolve itself sooner rather than later. Obviously, Tesla has done a pretty good job of, and Tesla's starting to open up their network to non-Teslas. Right now, there are 7 locations in New York and 2 in California that have what they call the Magic Dock, that allows a CCS-enabled vehicle to plug into a ChargePoint supercharger, and you actually pay through the app. That's going to be expanded. Electrify America and EVgo do have some locations that allow you to go, but they're not quite as prevalent as you might hope. However, that's what this NEVI program is for, National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Program, that President Biden signed. $5 billion that's going to be split up among the states. And every state got an allocation based on how many interstate highway miles they have. But the goal is to have 4 150 kilowatt DC fast chargers every 50 miles along the interstate, every interstate in the country. And so even in Hawaii, where they only have interstates on one island, but they're going to get the money anyway. And so it will be taken care of. I mean, this is something that the federal government has identified as a barrier to adoption. And so they're going to make sure that this is where their number one focus is. Once the interstates are taken care of, any leftover money the states can then apply to secondary roads, state highways, et cetera, or perhaps their own fleets. Colorado is getting something like, I want to say, $40 million or so to do that, and we're already making some good progress. Texas is getting $460 million because they have more interstate highway miles than anybody else. They actually are getting more than California, but it'll happen. It's not ever happening as fast as any of us want, but it'll happen.
Looks like Craig's got a question. There you go.
I have 2 questions. My wife and I are on our second Leaf and love the car. Could you talk a little bit about CHAdeMO? And then I'll ask my other question.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, we're kind of dealing with a Betamax versus VHS scenario. And pretty much the entire industry is going towards the CCS standard and away from CHAdeMO. However, it's not going away entirely. The NEVI stations that we've ordered are typically 4 dual port stations, but one of those plugs is going to be a CHAdeMO unit. So the Leaf drivers, at least, aren't going to be left out in the cold, and we'll be able to still charge up. And, having 1 out of every 8 seems a little bit small, but if you look at the market share of Nissan, it's right about on target, I think. So it's not going away yet. It's going to be supported for quite a few years to come. And I think you see the same kind of setup for most Electrify America stations, where they may have 4 dual port units. One of those cables is always a CHAdeMO at minimum.
I heard recently that Electrify America's new stations do not have a CHAdeMO.
I have not seen any of their new ones yet, so I can't verify that or not. But I know that there's some politics there. As you may be aware, Electrify America spun out of Volkswagen, and so Volkswagen is all CCS. So they have some reasons to want to try and push the CCS standard beyond practical matters and into the fact that it supports the old parent company.
Second question is, I recently saw on a club membership that I belong to here. I live in Grand Junction. And there was a sticker to put on the charge unit that has the CHAdeMO asking people to please move over if they have a CCS, because I'm stuck. I can only plug in at the CHAdeMO. I don't know if you've been involved in that, but the sticker isn't big enough, I'll tell you that.
I've not heard about that yet. There's one of the things that's great about this EV revolution, and the Denver Electric Vehicle Council is a fantastic example of it, is citizen engagement and activism. And it sounds to me like some interested and aware citizens put that together. And that's great. One of the things that we're all going to have to learn better, and the newbies are slowly learning from those of us that have been in it, like this group for a long time, what that etiquette is. And that includes if you're at 80% on a DC fast charger and somebody else needs it, get out and go to a level 2. Don't hog it all the way up to 100. If you have a car and you're in the station that has the CCS and CHAdeMO cable, and a leaf pulls up, move on over if you can. We're all going to figure it out eventually, but it's going to take some time. This is that stage of market development that's a little painful, where it's going mainstream, and so those of us that got in a long time ago, who are a little bit more aware and sensitive to some of these issues, are no longer the dominant users. But it's how markets develop, and it's happened with just about every technology out there. But we'll figure it all out.
Thank you.
I saw Kevin raised a hand a while there.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, Jim, I wanted to ask about that sign that Camilla held up earlier.
Mhm.
Is that a national honored sign or just a Colorado based?
It was Colorado law, and so it's a sign that was approved by the Colorado DOT. Now, of course, if you have a Kansas license plate and you're violating it in Colorado, we're still going to tow you. But unfortunately, there is not an equivalent national yet. But I wouldn't be surprised. We see the same with ADA standards. California right now is the only state that has ADA standards that specifically apply to electric vehicle parking and charging. State of Colorado doesn't have anything yet, and you talk to the state officials and they say we could do something as a state, but we're so close to having the feds do something. We don't know when it's going to come down, but we don't want to expend all this effort to put in some policies for ADA EV charging and then have everything be overruled by a federal policy that might be a little bit different. So again, kind of in that gap of market adoption where policies are going to start drifting towards the federal side of things, but we're not there yet.
Do you think that these signs are effective?
Well, I can tell you that you can't ticket or tow unless you have a sign that's up there. And I do think that it does make a difference. At least it puts people on notice that, especially for the non-electric drivers, people do tend to honor the ADA signs. And I think by just having a sign up there saying we can ticket or tow you, and having that big $150 fine in the largest font on the sign, it at least lets people know, you better think twice about doing this. Even if the site host doesn't follow through, just knowing that they have the ability to do so, hopefully is going to prevent some people from bad behavior.
Yeah, I'm going to put in the chat a link to, I was at the Bethany, Missouri Tesla supercharger just doing a review, and the whole thing was iced, including one was an official police vehicle, and the other one was a pile of dirt.
Yeah, we're still trying to train the snowplow drivers in Colorado not to use the charging spot as the snow recipient, but people are starting to figure it out. So I think I saw Jim first, and then Nigel, and then
Yeah,
Craig.
my question is about the future of level 2, because this federal program is all fast charging, isn't it? It's they're not putting in level 2s, but I guess ChargePoint's taking care of that. But you know, there are a lot of, I suppose in a few years, every electric car will have both the level 2 and DC fast charging connection on it. Maybe that's already happening, I don't know. But there are a lot of legacy vehicles out there that can't use fast chargers, and I'm wondering whether we need to worry about those legacy legacy vehicles not having. Are we going to have a reduced number of level 2 charging stations?
Well, I can tell you the ratio of what we sell is shifting. You know, for many years it was virtually all level 2 and a little tiny bit of DC when it started. Now DC is certainly more prevalent. But I don't think that means the death of level 2 either. Level 2 certainly is still going to have a spot where you have longer dwell times, and that's going to be at single family homes, multifamily residences, office places, hotels. Yeah, it doesn't really make sense for a hotel to have a DC fast charger when people are going to be sleeping 8 hours anyway. And so, and what we are seeing on the level 2 side is a creep up to faster and faster level 2 units. So right now, for instance, there's quite a few 80 amp options out there, which is great because you get close to that really maxes out the level 2 specs. But at the same time, because of how the cars communicate with the stations, even older, slower vehicles can still use it. So it's kind of like the best of both worlds. And so I think we're going to see more and more of that, where we see the high powered level 2 stations going in and for a lot of those locations, and then you know, DC for the longer road trips. What for DC, the way I see, there's really 3 audiences for that. One is people that are traveling. 2 are the rideshare drivers that need that fast fill up. And then 3 are the folks that live in a high dense area where they don't have the ability to charge at their home. But you know, they may want to stop by the local convenience store and charge up once every 4 days because they don't have any other option. I'm thinking of downtown San Francisco or Manhattan, you know, that kind of area, or even the Capitol Hill in Denver would be a good example of that. But beyond that, you know, there's still a big market for level 2. Nigel, good to see you, my friend.
Hey, how are you all? Nice to see you all. Good morning. I have a couple of questions. Repairability or repairs of equipment is still horrendous. I'm finding. I met a guy yesterday, the EV Go charger down in Costco, and he covers Colorado, Wyoming, and Kansas. It's like, and he's living out of his car. It's like, this is a huge industry that how do we pull more people into it, or how do we bring the utilities in? Because surely the utilities, they know they're 480 volt, they're DC, they're 3-phase, and they're on site. So I wonder if people are going to start doing some contracting with them. The other thing is, it just seems like there are so many people bringing out charging stations. And I guess my other concern with that is that there's so many different brands that have so many different pieces of equipment that, you know, there's no uniformity whatsoever. And so from a parts perspective and a repair perspective, and stuff that's future-proofed or not future-proofed is a whole nother part of it that it doesn't seem to get talked about at all. And finally, we are pushing, as you were saying, about level 3 or DC fast charging, and where's the best place for it. I wonder if there's enough push for level 2 chargers, because as you say, for most people, level 2 charging is more than adequate. We just don't have banks of them. I mean, I go to the Museum of Nature and Science, and they got like 4 or 5 downstairs free. Boom, you know, there for an hour, 2 hours. I've put, you know, a lot of miles back into the car. So a lot of questions all at once, or thoughts,
Sure.
I guess.
Sure. Well, kind of working backwards, yeah, level 2 is still a lot more cost effective than DC.
Yeah.
There still is no business model to be had to own and operate a level 2 station on as a standalone business. I mean, Blink has lost $300 million over the last 10 years with no end in sight. It still is a great choice for places where you do have that longer dwell time. A museum is a great example. The zoo, there's no reason to have a DC fast charger there. In some cases, having a DC fast charger is just going to kind of gum up the works because people are going to plug in, forget to unplug, and they go see the giraffe, and then So I think there is going to be a strong market for level 2 for a very long time, and it's incumbent on people like us to be able to recommend the right tool for the job, and be responsible about it. One of the things that our team is very careful to do is not oversell a client something that they don't need, but really try and fit the solution for what the need's going to be. And we often will look at it, in a 1, 3, and 5 year time frame, for example. But going to the serviceability issue and the uptime issue, that's going to be more and more important as time goes on. Part of the challenge is that nobody in the industry has defined how we actually define uptime. Sometimes it's a mechanical issue, sometimes a communication issue. If the station still works, but it's not communicating to the 4G tower, is that dead or is that actually working? And so hopefully we'll get some definition around that soon. But we're seeing organizations pop up that are dedicated to charger maintenance and repair. In fact, we're talking to a manufacturer right now that I think we're going to be able to announce in the next month or so. And part of their requirement of us would be the ability to get to a station within 48 hours and fix it on the spot, have spare parts in stock so that it can be one trip to repair it and be done. And to me, that's very appealing because I've seen how inefficient it is to send out a technician, do a diagnosis, then send parts, and then wait for the parts to arrive, and then go back a second time. It's insane. So I think that's what we're going to see as the industry matures, is organizations dedicated to uptime. There's going to be more than one guy who is going from Wyoming to New Mexico, and can get there. And some of the parts are interchangeable. Let's say you take a tritium station and it comes out of the factory with a certain CCS cable, and that cable breaks. You don't really have to necessarily put that same CCS cable on to have it work again. You should be able to use the CCS cable you have in the truck, if that, and whoever that happens to fit. A cable is a cable is a cable, and that's the nice thing about having standardized plugs. There are some other parts inside that are going to be standard. Some are going to be like circuit boards. Those are going to be the custom pieces. That's really going to be the challenge. What we are seeing, and this is something I'm really glad to see as a development, is more modularity in design. So that today, like the station that's at Jim Smith's office, if the head goes bad, we have to replace the whole head. And that does, even if it's a cracked holster, we have to replace the whole head. The next generation of station, which we're starting to see roll out right now, the holsters are modular, the cables are modular, the screen is modular, the RFID reader is modular, so that we can diagnose what the problem is, go out and just switch that one part and make it fast and easy, and not have this back and forth of confirming what's wrong and just get it done. Did I leave anything out?
Nope.
Okay. Craig, I see your hands up too.
I have a question. I have a friend that owns an apartment house in Aurora. You know anybody in Aurora? He needs more service. His breaker box upgraded, and everybody tells him, and he wants to put solar on the roof. Everybody tells him he has to go through Excel. Excel doesn't want to do anything because it's an apartment house. He bought two Tesla chargers. He's got one hooked up, but he doesn't have it grounded, which sounds kind of scary.
Mhm.
But I don't know. I mean, I followed the inspector when I got my Tesla charger in my house, and the guy made him pull a wire all the way into the gas meter and attach it to the gas meter, because that was the ground, not the water pipe, which scares me too. But you know, they said, well, water pipes are turning to plastic and gas lines are still metal. So anyway, can I give him your name? Can I give you his name, and maybe you guys can get together?
Yeah, we're happy to take a look. It is true that Excel sometimes can be the bottleneck. You know, if they do have some, on the flip side, they have some great programs where if you have a large enough facility and are willing to make a large enough commitment, Excel will come in very often and put in that underlying infrastructure at little to no cost. Often they'll cover like 80%, for example, but you have to put in a certain number of ports in order for them to make that commitment. Unfortunately, like any massive organization, they're not speedy. And you know, they take their time. And I know that anytime you're dealing with that connection to the grid, Excel has to get involved. And so, you know, if it's a service panel upgrade, it all depends on what's coming into the building. But you know, the partner electricians we have, they can go out and say, all right, you know, here's what we can. Usually the way we do it, any analysis like that, is we end up with 3 answers. One is, what can you do today with virtually no upgrade? 2 is, what can you do with a very reasonable upgrade? And 3 is, what's going to take to do the whole enchilada that you might want to do? And you know, sometimes those 3 end up being, you know, 2 of them might be close together on the spectrum and the other one way out. Sometimes they're evenly spread out. You know, but we aren't going to ever know until we actually get into the property and see what's going on. We did that exercise with some of the biggest buildings downtown last month, and we're still talking with the management company about, you know, what do they want to do? Do they want to do the 5-year plan where they put in 40 ports in every garage, or do they want to do the 3-year plan where it's maybe 20 ports, or do they want to just do what they can do today and, you know, maybe add 2 to 4 new ports without doing a whole lot of upgrades? You know, they're kind of going through that analysis themselves. And you know, we'll be happy to do whatever they choose to do. So please do forward your buddy's information, and Kamala is going to be assigned that project, and so
I'll just put,
Teach
let
you
me
to
just,
come on.
right, let me just put
people
my
like talking to Kamala more than me. So.
contact info.
Okay.
Can I just say something there, just very briefly? Kamala, you are a great addition.
Oh, thank
By
you.
the way, you really are. You're super nerdy. I love it. Yeah. So
That is
nice
accurate.
addition.
Yep.
Thank you. That was it.
I believe Craig had another question.
I think so.
Back to Kamala's sign.
Mhm.
I had an experience here in Grand Junction where the police department was totally unaware of that statute. So it's a case of advising even the PDs what kind of authority or what kind of legislation is out there.
Well, part of this requirement to have a sign that meets the approval is a reference to the statute. There you go. So you could just tell them, hey, look up Colorado Revised Statute 42-4-1213. It's that will tell them everything they need to know.
I took a copy of the statute down to the PD and gave it to them.
Awesome.
Thank
Very
you.
good. Very good. And you know, I would sell that as a revenue generating opportunity for the police department.
Right.
Right.
And I believe the revenue split is, I forget if it's 50-50, but like some goes into the general fund and some does stay with whoever collects it. So, so that they may as well. And to just so you know, we actually tried for 350 originally because they do that in Arizona and the cops show up because $350 is significant. But in Colorado, they were concerned about the cost and it being a burden to those who couldn't afford that. So that's the art of politics. There was some compromise there, but that's it.
It's still better than 75 I've seen on some of the states back east, so.
Yes.
All right, any last questions? I guess it's supposed to be a half hour of Q&A and we've gone 45 minutes. So I think we've definitely sucked up a lot of the time of the meeting.
I think it's been really good. We've had a lot of good questions, covered a lot of area. It's good to know. It would be nice to see some more standardization take place, both being able to do rapid repairs and all that sort of thing. But I guess it's all part of the growing pains.
I think growing pains is a great term to use right now. You know, we're at a stage of the market development 10 years in, or for us 11 years, and you know, the early birds 15 years, but you know, for a lot of us, it's about a decade. And the level of interest is skyrocketing. The ability to keep up with everything is getting more and more difficult, but you know, we're adding team members like Kamala, and we added a couple other folks to the team at the same time in other parts of the country. You know, we're dealing with supply shortages, but then we're trying to figure out ways to fix that. So, you know, for us personally, that means that we're going to start stocking parts, more and more spare parts, that even if it's not an official part stocking program, we're going to do it so that we can react faster than the rest of the industry. And that's it's because it's what we need to do in order to keep this revolution going. So that's I think what we're going to see is a lot of the pain points that we're seeing in 2023 are going to start to get figured out, and as the year goes on and we get into next year.
And there was one thing that you had said earlier that just reminded me when you talk about like the Chad demo versus CCS. I think of it the same way that it's like a gas station would have one diesel pump, and it just kind of is understood. If you're not getting, like, leave that one. If there's another one available, you would go there instead. And I think the same kind of awareness will happen in time for EVs. But
yeah, the good thing with electric vehicles is you can't do what a friend of mine did in high school, and that is put gasoline into her father's diesel vehicle. But no, it's we're figuring it out as an industry, and you know, appreciate the understanding and patience, and you know, we are working 6.5 days a week to try and keep up with it all. But you know, really glad to have the support of and the interest of groups like this. So thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to chat. Oh, did I see one more hand raised, Kevin?
Yes, if you would put your contact information in the chat, and to Camilla's example, you know, I went through the transition between leaded and unleaded gas, and they moved the nozzle diameter down so you couldn't put leaded gas into the newer cars. So we've made that transition okay. So I think going from CHAdeMO to CCS will work out fine.
Yeah, we'll figure it out for sure. So I did include our email and toll-free number on there. And Kamala, if you want to add your personal contact information, feel free. But all right, very good. Well, thanks again, everybody. Good to see a lot of you. I haven't seen you in a while, and you know, hopefully we'll see you out there at some of the Drive Electric Week events that are coming up.
Thanks for joining us today, Jim. Appreciate it, and had some good info today. And we'll have this recording up on our YouTube site here when our YouTube person gets it put up. So cool beans. Thanks.
All right, thanks so much. Take care.
Bye.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
What was the name of we had a meeting with somebody that was, I think all kinds of EV seller, used EV seller, but especially Tesla. They said they were the biggest used Tesla marketplace. Who was that? Who was that?
That's on the front of the newsletter.
Okay.
Find My Electric or something like that.
Oh yeah, Find My Electric. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. My roommate just got his truck stolen from the driveway last night. And he's like, I should buy a Tesla. You can't steal those, can you? And I said, I don't think you can. Can you steal a Tesla?
Well, even if somebody steals it, you know where it is at all times.
Right.
So,